Good evening on a cold Tuesday night in Johannesburg. And thank you so much for joining us from wherever you're watching, preferably at home while you need to stay home and stay safe during this third wave of COVID. Thank you for joining us with the Private Property team. This is the Farming Podcast, and my name is none other than Mbali Nwoko. Today we're speaking to a poultry farmer, and we're deep diving into the current issues that are currently affect the poultry industry. Is the poultry industry a worthy investment? Should you, as an aspirant or startup farmer, invest in a poultry business? And maybe just to get a bit of an understanding of the entire poultry value chain, because the entrepreneur and founder that we have today currently has his own broilers, his own layers, has a hatchery and a distribution leg to his business. So it seems like he's dabbled into quite a lot of the different areas within the poultry value chain. So he's definitely someone that I'm looking forward to having a conversation with this evening. Like I say always on the show, please ask any questions that you may have for the guest. We're here for you, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have related to poultry farming. And please like, share, and comment. We really would love the engagement. We just need to know if the Farming Podcast is bringing value to you. Most importantly, if you know of anybody who is wanting to venture into the agri industry, please share this podcast with them and tell them to subscribe on our YouTube channel, because we've got loads of agri content available on the Private Property YouTube channel under the Farming Podcast playlist. But without taking any more time, I would like to introduce you to Tumi for short, Ntsau. He's the CEO and founder of TNB Agric Producers. Tumi, thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, ma'am, for invitation. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. I love talking to poultry farmers because I think personally on my side, it's such a risky business. I know that farming is risky in a whole, but I feel like, I'm a vegetable farmer, but to meet a poultry farmer, I think, a poultry farmer definitely has to have resilience because of the so many aspects that affect the industry, most importantly, the chickens directly. But maybe if you could just introduce yourself to the audience. We know that you do Ntsau, but what is it that you do, and how your business operates?
Thank you very much, ma'am. My name is Tuminzo. I'm based in Witbank, Mpumalanga. That's where we are doing our broilers and layers there. We rear layers up to point of lay from day old. We do hatch the broilers, and then we distribute the day-old chicks, and we do rear them as well. And then at 6 weeks, we sell them to our communities nearby. But on the distribution of the day-olds, we distribute, so far we've distributed to 7 provinces in South Africa, on the broilers and the layers as well. So that's what we are doing. And then we do sell feeds. But in that part, we work with companies like Azu, Agric, and sometimes we're working with people as well. So that's what we are doing. Yes.
All right. So you mentioned the feed companies. Are you a redistributor of the feeds, or you produce your own feeds and sell to these companies?
At the moment, we are distributing their feeds. Like, for instance, Azu, Agric, even Ipol, they approached me at some time to say to me, since you are dealing with chickens and they need feed, and you sell to the clients all over, then you can just market even our feeds as well. When you give them the chicks, they can use our feeds to grow their chickens with. So that's what I've been doing, distribute their feeds to our clients. But there is as well that door of making our own feeds, because we, like myself, we've done our feeds as well. We started doing our feeds, but the challenge maybe can be if you don't have the big land to plant a lot of yellow maize and other ingredients that will be needed to make those feeds. But we are able to do our own feeds as well and give to our chickens.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things that in the future we are looking at to go into doing our own feeds and then selling our feeds.
Yeah. And at what point does a farmer need to say, now I need to produce my own feed? And even if when they do come to that point to say, now I need to produce my own feed, how do I know what is required to be in the feed? Is there a regulation? Is there like a recipe as well? How do I know what to use as my chicken feed?
You know, it's a matter of having enough land because to plant the like for instance when you are making feeds for the chickens you need a lot of yellow maize.
Okay.
You need some soya beans, you need like sunflowers and all that. That is why you see most of commercial farmers who have big lands, if you drive like myself, I'm always driving from Witbank, whether going to Joburg, to clients or Pretoria, all over. But on the road, on the way, on the highway, you will see a lot of yellow maize that
Yes.
many commercial farmers are planting. And in
True.
most cases, as emerging farmers, we would think that maybe maize is not important or what, but maize is very, very important. You know, even myself, sometimes if I get maize, then I just use the hammer mill to grind it so that I can mix with other ingredients to make feed, whether for my chickens or whether for my sheep and goats, because I also have the sheep and goats as well, or whatever livestock that one can have. You're going to need the yellow maize to make a feed. And if let's say, for instance, as emerging farmers, you get to a point where you have hectares of land where you can plant even yellow maize. Then when you go into poultry farming, you will make a lot of money because we spend a lot, like the cost that we spend on is on the feeding of the chickens. So if you win even on that part, that you have the big lands to plant the yellow maize, the sunflower, the soya beans, then when coming to livestock farming or poultry farming, you will definitely win.
Yeah. From your experience, Dumi, at what stage would a farmer have to say that now it's time for me to produce my own feed? So, for example, do I have to start producing my own feed maybe when I've got like 100,000 chickens? Or do I need to start producing my own feed at maybe with 10 chickens? Like, is there an economies of scale or an industry standard number to say, if you've got 100,000 birds, then you should look at producing your own feed because the economies of scale would just make more business sense to just do your own feed?
Yeah, it is still always good to start even from small. Know how to make it, whether you have too many chickens or you have few chickens. Know how to make your own feed from the beginning, the onset. Then you can win. But now the most important thing, even when going to that part, is to have land, because when you are going to plant yellow maize, you need big land. Like
Yes.
myself, last year I planted about 2 hectares. It was not so much big,
Yeah.
It's not 2 hectares is not big land. There
Yeah.
are people who have like 500 hectares, 1,000 hectares. They have access to that. Some you find they have those land, but they don't have an idea of what to do with that. But now,
Exactly.
let's say you have access to that kind of land, you can then start planting yellow maize, sunflower, or soya beans, or you can just plant yellow maize and then buy the concentration.
Right.
high protein concentrators from those that can supply you, like even also sometimes they can agree to supply you with that. Then you can make your own feed even from there, that you can feed your chickens with. Whether you are raising 500 broilers or you are raising 1,000 broilers, there you will see even enough profits. Because, like for instance, let's say you are raising 1,000 broilers, you're gonna need about, let's say, 35,000 rand. That
Yes.
includes the feed of your chickens. It includes the stock for the 1,000 beds. It includes your cost of electricity and all that. But the high cost is on the feeding part. And that
Yes.
feed I'm talking about on this amount is the feed that you have bought. You see,
Yes.
from those big companies, that like that is the complete feed that they've already made. But now just imagine, let's say you had maybe 10 hectares of land or 20 hectares of land, you planted that yellow maize, and then now instead of going to buy, maybe say spend 20,000 on feed costs, then you spend maybe say 7,000, 10,000 because you already have the yellow maize. Only what you need to do is just to make your mixture of the feeding of the, because like for instance with the broilers, when you raise them in 6 weeks time, it's a very short time. So for them to grow that fast, they need feeding that has high concentration of proteins in it. So now in that, you, let's say you have the yellow maize, and then, or what the cost that you're going to have there is only maybe to buy the ingredients, or that will make that yellow maize to pick up the high proteins in that yellow maize, so that your chickens will grow even faster. So if you, let's say for instance, you have access to planting your own feeding or making your own feeding, that's where you will win a lot. Now, most of emerging farmers, it becomes a challenge when coming to that part, because that is where they spend too much of their money in raising those chickens.
I
But now,
see.
if you'll check, for instance, from the commercial farmers, most of them they make a lot of money, because you find, for instance, they have the fields for feeding, so meaning they don't buy the feeds, or even starting from the hatchery part, you find, let's say maybe let's talk about which company can I make an example of? Let's say Rainbow Chicken. Rainbow Chicken, they've got big hatcheries in Cape Town and even here I think in Midrand, if not mistaken. Now, in those hatcheries where they hatch like hundreds of thousands of chicks weekly, you find the eggs. Like for instance, on myself, on my hatchery, I have to buy the fertile eggs for broilers or for layers from these big guys who got the parent stock. Now, with the companies like Rainbow Chicken and others, you find, for instance, they have their own houses where they keep their parent stock.
I
Those
see.
parent stock are the chickens that lay eggs that are going to hatch chicks. So meaning that when they load their hatcheries, they load from the eggs that they got from their parent stock. So meaning that they didn't buy them. With
Yes.
us, myself, for my hatchery, I have to buy those eggs. So
Yes.
with them, so you see, they have the parent stock that lay eggs, fertile eggs, and then they take them to their big hatcheries, and then from their big hatcheries they hatch their old chicks, and then those their old chicks they load them to their houses where they're going to rear them for 6 weeks, and then from there they start selling meat. Now, when they raise those chickens, the feeding for that, they have the fields, they make their own feeding. Now, with me as an emerging farmer, I buy the eggs. I don't have the parent stock. I buy the eggs. I put them in the machines. And then when I hatch them, I must go and buy the feeding and then raise those chickens and make that profit. But there's still some profit even there.
I see.
Yes, there's
Okay.
still some profit even there. And what is so good these days is that even the youth now is so much into poultry farming because
Yes.
it's a little bit more easier for many of us to go into it and start. But once you have started there, you have to grow slowly but surely and doing everything accordingly.
Yeah. So let's talk about that start, Dumi. How does one start? You know, I've got 2 hectares in my farm. Do I start by building some shacks? Maybe that could house 5,000 chickens. Do I start by building 4 so that I could rotate? And all of this information you know now because you've walked the walk. You know, you've
Yes,
walked the
yes.
journey and lived through the journey and obviously experienced a couple of highs and lows throughout your farming career. But for someone who's just starting and just wanting to understand how the poultry industry works in its entirety, where does one start? Do they start obviously with research, right? But do they
Yes.
start by just building some chicken houses and maybe just getting chickens from any hatchery and just growing it for 6 weeks? And what type of support is available out there for a person to know what right day olds are they buying and what type of feed they need, etc. So, is there support currently in the agricultural sector, specifically in poultry?
Yes, well, what I can say is that, when going to start the, I think one should go with the right numbers first. The right numbers maybe can be just test first because it depends again on the area where you are, the people that you're going to sell to, how is your market and everything. But especially if you start with the broilers, my advice would be to say, depending on the muscle of finances, but I would say start with the limited numbers and then go through the raising cycle, like the rearing cycle. I mean, and then once your chickens are matured, yeah, 6 weeks or 5 weeks, then you start testing the market how it responds to you.
Mhm.
If it responds well, okay. Even in that starting process, you will start to learn to see how everything went about. You see,
Yes.
because sometimes let's say maybe you decide to no, you know what, I'm gonna start with 2,000 chicks, and then along the way they die. Maybe you didn't have enough. The heating system was not enough, or it was too cold to start it in winter, or it was too hot in summer, and all things like that. So the best thing is to start with the number that you can afford, like in terms of even the time that you can give yourself to that business to
Yes.
monitor it until you see that now I can now let's say maybe start at 200, say okay, now I've seen the 200 has gone well, I've managed to sell to the people, I saw the market how it is, now I'm going to 500. When I did at some time, when I started raising, I did like 100, and then I started selling to the community, and with their response, because I saw, like, for instance, the 100 chickens that I did, when I was about to sell them, even a week before the time where I should sell, people
Mm.
were already starting to come and buy. By the time when I
Mm.
was saying it's the time that I should sell, they were all finished. So then
Mm.
I started creating some different, I mean, a couple of cycles. That this
Yes.
week I put 100, and then the following week I put another 100. The other week I put another 100, up to 6 weeks time. So that
Yes.
when I get to the 6 weeks time, or when I start selling the first batch, there is
Mm.
another second batch that is going to sell the following week and the
Mm.
other week, and then I keep on pushing on that. Every week I put some chickens there, the small
Yeah.
chicks that I'm raising, up until I realized that okay, now I've mastered the 100 babes on one coop. Ne?
Mm.
Now it's time to grow to put 300 each week. Then I
Yes.
started doing that because I'm checking my market, especially in the community. Because what I was doing then, there would be some people who would come and buy in bulk, some to go and resell. So my
Yes.
job now is just to raise chickens for them, and then when they are from 5 weeks old, many chickens would be matured enough to be on sale. Then people will come start picking up until I can put even more.
Yeah.
Then I went to the layer side as well. Yes.
I see. But also, I mean, you mentioned a number of elements, right, so far. The feed, the different companies that supply you with the feeds and the hatcheries and so forth.
Yes.
In growing, for example, the broilers or the layers, is there support from your where you buy your inputs from? So you mentioned like Azu, Agric, and Apple. With companies like that, do they support farmers to say this is the right vaccination to vaccinate your birds, this is the right feed at this quantities? How would one know how and when to feed their chickens? Especially if you're growing it for a commercial or a viable business aspect, like you were mentioning, starting with 100 and keeping 100 every cycle. How would one know, for example, when should I give my chickens water to drink? When should I vaccinate my birds? When should I keep them warm? And at what temperatures? Do these companies provide farmers with some intel and support to raise successful birds?
Yeah, well, it depends on the companies themselves, But then you find companies that do support because they want business, they want you to come
Yes,
and buy feeds from them.
yes.
So you find some companies that would have maybe technical support system, people that will always want to come and visit you at your farm to
Mm,
see how you are doing, how their feeds are performing on your cheeks and all that.
yes.
So yes, they do that. But at the same time, it becomes your responsibility as a farmer and a business person
Mm,
to always even teach yourself or attend courses if there are some nearby, or even sometimes always invite the extension officers of the Department of Agriculture
mm,
to come and monitor you, see how you are doing and all that. I know they here in Wheatbank, I know even on vegetables, you have very active ones that will do that. Also, even in the poultry industry, you'll find some that will still come and visit you just to check on you if everything is coming right. But what I would say, it depends on the companies that are nearby, how the relationship you may have with them. That they would want to say, okay, to me, I would like to come and see you there at your farm to see your chickens. If they are sick, then we can recommend some certain medications and all things like that. Yes.
And I think
Yes.
also the follow-up question there is, because you mentioned that it's important for a poultry farmer to also produce their own feed.
Yes.
If I just have knowledge of raising chickens, right? Going
Yes.
into crop production is also a different skill. I mean, yellow maize, you need to know the different seasons, the different cultivars based in your area,
Hmm.
and so forth. So, are the same companies able to guide you to say, Tumi, this is the cultivar that you need to buy from Declab, for example, for yellow maize. This is the plant population per hectare or per square meter. This is when you plant. Do they provide that support so that you successfully grow a feed a feed wing in your business?
Yeah, but on that one, I think it may be a challenge for I mean, for instance, the companies that I mentioned, because they have their own fields and all that, to
Yeah.
come and in a way show you how to do feed, because then it means that they will be losing a customer because they
Yeah.
want you to come and buy a complete that
Solution.
they've made themselves.
Yeah.
But once you started, you see, this one of feed making actually many companies that sell fees, they won't like you to listen to this part of that like I'm encouraging you to make your own feed because now they'll
Yeah.
be losing a client.
Yeah.
But between you between me and you, I would say maybe it's time that emerging farmers as well cut some costs when coming to feed. And it's one of the things that, because even ourselves, we started making our own. So we trust God that should we have big lands, then we'll push for planting yellow maize, soya beans, sunflower. Those things, those three that I've just mentioned, they contribute a lot in formulating that feed that you're going to need for the chickens.
Right. Is the poultry industry still a lucrative industry to invest in right now? So, for example, a farmer wants to start an agricultural business. Would you recommend them to be a poultry farmer instead of a cattle farmer or a vegetable farmer?
Well, what I've learned, I've learned that you need to diversify. When you're a farmer, don't farm with one thing alone. Because, like, for instance, myself, when I started reselling some chicks, but then I grew to a point that I bought my own machines, and then we distributed a lot in many places, and we made a lot of money at the time. A lot of money. Like, I saw that poultry farming has money. But then after the COVID, there is a time where there was too much scarcity of the chicks, and that led me into losing a lot of money because there was no supply, there was shortage, and then we had this bird flu. It affected a lot because it hit the breeders, like those parent stock that I was talking about. They're the ones that were affected a lot, and when they kill those parent stock, then we run short of the fertile eggs in the country. And now, if you don't get the fertile eggs, then we don't get the chicks. So now, and then that is where our business is, you see. But that is why now I started buying goats, sheep. At some time I want to go even into other livestock farming, and I'm now looking into planting vegetables and what. When you are a farmer, you shouldn't limit yourself to one
Commodity.
department. Yes, or deal with the chickens alone. Deal with the chickens. Sometimes go to piggery, go to goat farming, sheep farming, vegetables, those crop farmings, all of them. That is my advice. But the poultry farming does have money, and it's easy to go into it. But it also has its own challenges along the way. That sometimes, let's say, maybe there is no supply. Like, let's say maybe there are no chicks, the broilers, and like myself, I was distributing like 30,000 chicks a week, and now let's say you are used to that, that every month your bank account clicks more than 500,000 to 1,000,000, and then there is a point where now they say no, the chickens are not available. 3 months go down the line, you don't have anything coming in. So you see, it's a big challenge. So now the best important thing is that, when there is an open door in the industry of poultry, try to work as hard as you can and as quick as you can, and still invest on other things. But every time there is a lot of chicks available, or there is a lot of market and all that, go into it. There is a big demand. I was distributing even up to Botswana.
Wow.
Yeah, Botswana. In fact, I've distributed to 6 countries so far, in Lesotho, Zimbabwe. I had people coming from Namibia, people coming from Swaziland, people coming from Mozambique, Botswana. They come in by distance from this side. Yeah. But now the time when they closed the borders and all that, and we are distributing even here in the country and all that. So there is a big demand.
Right.
the,
On the topic of demand, Tumin, I think this is where we'll close off our conversation, which has been such a huge masterclass, if I may say, because you've gone very deep into every single aspect. Although, we don't have all the time in the world, we could go on for longer. But yeah, I feel like it's been a masterclass on the topic of demand, especially in the poultry production. Which markets would you say are more lucrative now, based on your experience? Is it best to be a contract farmer, and supply to your rainbow chickens, your egg birds on the layers perspective? So is it best to rather go the contract farming route, or would you advise farmers to really dabble into just an informal market or creating their own markets? Because you mentioned that when you started, there was a time where you had 100 and the community wanted to buy at least a week before, and then by the time you're ready, all your stock was sold out. So is there more demand from an informal side, or would you advise someone to really go into contract farming?
Well, I would say you can start where it's possible for you. Let's say maybe they give you a contract and it's a good contract, it's great, But with the poultry farming, contract or no contract, people must eat the chicken, and chicken is cheap. And it's the fast selling meat.
Yeah.
You see? Yeah. So the market for it, you always have a lot of market on the chicken farming, whether formal or informal. In fact, even on informal part, you will still make it because there are a lot of people that will want the meat, depending on how you are doing it. Because, like for instance, with me, I was distributing to the farmers who are going to rear those chickens for the people in their communities. That is why, like, we'd find like weekly, I would distribute to 3 provinces, 4 provinces that we distribute the chicks to the farmers there. You find that one farmer is taking 1,000 chicks, the other is taking 2,000 chicks, the other is taking 200 chicks. So we'll just distribute to them, and then they will grow them. So the poultry farming, you can do it even if you don't have a contract. But if you have a contract, it's a blessing. Like if you have formal contracts and they are working well for you. Because the challenge is, I once approached a manager at Pick and Pay, and I said I wanted to give him the chicken meat, but the prices that he gave me, I realized no, it won't work for me, because he still has to go and resell, and now he wants to sell. Let's say maybe he wants to sell a kg at 40 rands a kg of a chicken, and then to me he said to me, I can only give you 24 rands. Now, for me, I feel it's a little bit small. But for somebody who's raising 50,000 chicks, 50,000 chickens, then it's a good price, because even if he's making 5 rand or a 2 rand in every chicken, he knows that in that 50,000, if he makes 2 rand, he's making 100,000 in that 6 weeks. If he's making 10 rand, then he's making even a lot. But for me, on the quantities, that's another thing that so if I go to a contract one, I must have big quantities. Then I know that there I'll be making it. You understand my point? And then on the informal part, if I have big quantities, that's where maybe, let's say maybe the market is not too much, then that's where maybe the challenge. But if the market still is too much, you can. I have a friend who's got who's raising 40,000 chickens. Those chickens, they get sold out just like this within a week.
40,000. To which markets?
Which markets? To even the informal market.
Wow.
Yeah, because in fact, he once met my truck on the road, and then he called me and said, man, I see you've got a big truck. I saw it, and I spoke to your drivers. They gave me your number. We have our chicken houses. We take 40,000. We put 40,000. So if you are interested, you can come. Then I drove straight to Limpopo, and I met him there at his farm. It's very big. I was there even last month. Immediately when he opens, you just say, guys, we are going to open the chickens at this date. The average weight is this, and we are selling them at this price. I'm telling you, within a week, we are finished.
Wow.
And that's how it goes with the chicken. But at the same time, you need to put more on marketing the business that you're doing, whether on social media or whatever, so that people know about you. And then you give them a good service, give them a good quality, then those will market you.
Sure. Tumi, thank you so much. You've kind of made me want to maybe invest a few rands and cents there in the poultry industry. So I think if I've got capital for, I don't know, 1,000 chickens, I'll definitely be calling you just to say, firstly, support your business by buying the chicks from you, and just to get some assistance, because you're making it sound so lucrative. And I mean, remember what I said in the beginning of our conversation, to say that I love talking to poultry farmers, because from my view, from a vegetable farmer, I think poultry is such a risky business, because literally you cough and the chickens die. You know, that's how sensitive they are.
Yeah.
That's how sensitive they are to just any airborne diseases. But thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I think it was just a masterclass. If willing, I would love to have you back on to the podcast, maybe to discuss more technical information or technical stuff, you know, because I picked on a couple of things that you mentioned, which we obviously can't go through it in the show because we only have 30 minutes. But thank you so much for your time. And I guess the viewers as well would love this conversation. And yeah, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much for invitation, ma'am. God bless you.
It's a pleasure, and continue just doing the most with your business, and all the best with it, and may it grow. Definitely may it grow, and I hope you get customers from this conversation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you. We were just speaking to Tumi Ntsau. If you missed this conversation, I think it's definitely a highlight for me for this month. We were talking about the state of poultry farming in South Africa, and Tumi mentioned some critical elements about poultry farming. That yes, it is a business to go into. It's has low barriers to entry as opposed to other industries. You have to diversify, whether you're a poultry farmer or just any other commodity farmer. You have to diversify to hedge on those risks. But most importantly, Tumi gave us a brief a rundown of the different value chains and the different aspects where a farmer needs to focus on, basically, whether it's contract farming, whether it's informal markets, from a feed, from a different cycles, from the quantities that you need to start with, and basically understanding your market and speaking to customers so that they can buy the volumes or meet the volumes that you're currently producing at. And you could start at any scale, which is what he said. So if you missed this conversation, please go onto our Private Property YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, go onto the Farming Podcast playlist, and you will catch us. This is episode 67 of the Farming Podcast. But thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay home and stay safe. Take care.